The gates at Berea stayed locked behind a wall of rain today, and the detail that actually matters here isn't the weather itself, it's what the weather took away. Day 9 was supposed to be a pads day. The 3 guys fighting for the Browns' starting job were supposed to strap up and finally give us contact, real pocket pressure, real physicality on underneath routes. Instead, we got another no pads. Tackle optional session, and depending on how you want to read that, it either sharpens this quarterback competition or blurs it just a little. Pads change the sport. They change how a pocket actually collapses instead of just looking like it might. They change how a receiver finishes through a hit instead of just catching a ball in space. So hold on to that thought for everything I'm about to walk you through, because tomorrow the pads go back on, Shedeur takes the ones again, and we might be watching a genuinely different story unfold. Before I get into who separated themselves, I want to be straight with you about something that happened to all 3 quarterbacks today, because it would be dishonest to pretend otherwise. Shedeur Sanders threw one, Deshaun Watson threw one, Dylan Gabriel threw one. Every single passer in this competition put a football somewhere it had no business going. So nobody gets to win this day off a highlight reel and a couple of pretty throws. What actually separates these 3 guys isn't the mistake. It's the response to the mistake. And if you've watched enough training camp football, you already know that response is usually a better predictor of a December starter than any single practice rep could ever be. Let me take you through Shedeur first, because even without pads, he gave us a couple of reps that deserve real credit. In full teamwork, he ran a levels concept and actually worked it the right way, reading the coverage, moving through his progression instead of locking onto his first read and hoping for the best. He followed that with an accurate, well-placed throw down the field to Luke Floria. Nothing about either rep is going viral tonight. Nothing about either rep needs to. Those are the plays that never get clipped and somehow end up mattering the most, because that's the stuff a coaching staff actually grades when they sit down Sunday morning and watch the tape without the noise. Then the interception happened, and I'm not going to bury it or spin it, because that's not what this channel does. Shedeur looked for his tight end. The ball hung in the air just a beat too long, and Emmanuel McNeil Warren read it the entire way, closed underneath it, and took it away clean. If you don't know that name yet, get comfortable with it fast, because any Browns coverage acting like this defense is a question mark simply hasn't watched this camp closely enough. The range this rookie showed getting to that football was real, NFL range, the kind of closing burst you can't coach into somebody. He's out of Toledo, and I'll say it plainly. His ball skills right now remind me of guys like Kyle Hamilton or Grant Delpit at a similar point in their development. That's not a hot take for engagement. That's just what the tape is showing me. Here's the part that actually matters for Shedeur specifically, and it's the part that gets lost when people just count picks like a box score stat. What does he do on the very next opportunity after that ball gets taken from him? Does he tighten up? Does he start short-arming throws because the last one cost him? He doesn't. He stands in, delivers a strike to Gage, and moves forward like the interception never happened. That's been the story 2 days running now, because he had a batted ball pick yesterday too, and both times the answer looked identical. No flinching, no retreating into safe checkdowns, just the next rep, thrown with the same conviction as the one before it. That's not luck. That's a trait. And it's exactly what evaluators are hunting for in a rookie who's supposed to be feeling every bit of pressure this open competition can produce. There's a quieter detail worth flagging here too, because in a race this tight, the quiet stuff ends up deciding jobs. I haven't seen a single pre-snap issue out of Shedeur through this stretch. No delay of games, no operational hiccups, no cadence problems that would burn a timeout or cost 5 yards in a game that actually counts this fall. I'll keep tracking that closely, because everyone wants to talk about arm talent and highlight throws, but winning football in this league gets built on the boring stuff just as much as it gets built on the deep ball. Then came the 2-minute drill, and honestly, this is where the box score does Shedeur dirty if you're not paying close attention. He drove that offense methodically, working the field, converting on 3rd down, running the huddle with real command. Then right around the 15-yard line, Winston Reed rips the ball loose and recovers it. ending the drive before Shedeur ever gets his shot at finishing with a touchdown. So there's no storybook ending to that period, and if all you see is the final stat line, it looks like a stalled possession. It isn't. He moved the offense the length of the field against a real defense. The ball just didn't stay in his skill player's hands at the finish line. Strip that turnover out of the equation, and this is a strong, forward-moving day for a rookie playing without pads. Clean operation, no wasted motion, a guy who takes a hit, absorbs it, and keeps building the next rep on top of it. Now let's talk about Deshaun Watson, because I owe him something honest here instead of hunting for reasons to bury him. He might have thrown the single best ball of the entire day. Rolling left, escaping what looked like a live sack developing right in front of him, and ripping a throw on the move to Isaiah Bond. That's the kind of off-schedule, extend-the-play work that separates a veteran who's actually lived through pressure from a guy who's still learning to feel it coming. Getting outside structure and still delivering something accurate downfield isn't something you fake, and I'm not going to pretend it doesn't matter just because it complicates a narrative. He followed it with maybe an even better throw, a clean, perfectly placed touchdown to Jerry Jeudy. No qualifiers needed on that one at all. Doesn't matter that the pads were off. That's just good football, delivered with real touch and real timing, and Watson gets full credit on that rep with 0 asterisks attached. But then there's the other half of his day, and this is where the inconsistency gets a lot harder to explain away. Late in a 2-minute end-of-game rep near the 30-yard line, he sails one well over Isaiah Bond, and Denzel Ward is just sitting underneath it, calmly hauling it in like he's fielding a punt in open grass. That's not a tipped ball. That's not a receiver running the wrong depth. That's a veteran quarterback, in a clearly defined situational rep, putting the football somewhere it should never have gone. And stacked right on top of that, there's a delay of game penalty on him too, a pre-snap breakdown that stands out specifically, because so much of the outside narrative around this competition has leaned on Watson's supposed built-in edge in exactly that category. The experience, the command of the huddle, the professional, disciplined operation a rookie theoretically hasn't earned yet. Watching that show up on tape, from footage that wasn't even mine originally, from a source about as neutral toward this whole storyline as you're going to find, it landed differently for me than it might have otherwise. Small thing on its own, sure, but small things are exactly what separate two talented arms when the actual talent gap between them isn't that wide to begin with. That's really the whole story with Watson right now, and I'd rather say it plainly than dance around it. His ceiling on any given snap might be as high as anybody's on this roster. The touch throw to Jeudy proves it. The rip to Bond in the 2-minute proves it, but his floor sits lower than Shedeur's floor, and the gap between his best rep of the day and his worst rep of the day is basically the whole story of where this competition stands right now. Shedeur's misses are survivable. He overthrows a check down, it gets batted down, he shrugs it off, and moves to the next snap completely unaffected. Watson's misses today looked more like real inconsistency surfacing under actual situational pressure, and that's a much harder thing to coach out of a guy this deep into year 9, especially with training camp reps as limited as they are. I want to be honest about something else too, because I said it in the last video and I still mean every word of it. I genuinely want Watson to go out and play great football this camp, not as a hedge, not as a courtesy. Because if you actually think it through instead of just rooting for chaos, the ideal outcome for Shedeur was never Watson collapsing and handing him the job by default in August. It's Watson playing well, using his legs, absorbing the hits, riding out what's probably his last real runway as the guy in Cleveland, while this offensive line gets more live reps together, and this scheme gets fully installed around an experienced presence under center. Then, when it eventually does become Shedeur's show, whether that's in November or next spring, he's stepping into a finished, battle-tested operation instead of a half-built one still figuring itself out. That's the best version of this timeline for a rookie trying to build a real career, not just win a training camp popularity contest. The problem, from where I'm sitting, is that Shedeur doesn't actually need that version to happen in order to succeed, and he certainly doesn't play like a guy waiting around for permission to take the job. If Watson keeps flashing plays like that rip to Bond, All it does is make this competition more compelling to watch. It doesn't make it any less threatening to Shedeur's timeline. Dylan Gabriel earned real attention today too, and I don't want him buried under the Shedeur versus Watson conversation, because by the raw numbers he actually posted the best completion percentage of all three quarterbacks. There was a gorgeous deep shot that drew a pass interference flag downfield to Malachi Corley, exactly the kind of throw that flips your offense into a favorable spot even when it never technically gets caught. Corley did a genuinely nice job protecting himself and the ball through contact on the way down, fighting the defender off instead of letting it get ripped loose, which isn't always a given with a young receiver in this league. Give Gabriel his 15 yards on that one, because that's the exact outcome you want when you push the ball vertically and draw a flag, instead of settling for an incompletion. Gabriel had his own turnover on the day too, an underthrown shot intended for his rookie receiver out of Baylor, who had genuinely beaten his man by a full step downfield. The ball just didn't get there in time, the window closed, and a Browns defensive back closed underneath it and came away with the football. That's the kind of miss that tends to show up specifically when a coaching staff is emphasizing aggressive downfield shots in a given practice window, and from everything coming out of Berea today, that's exactly what this session was built around. Deep ball emphasis. Install largely finished at this stage of camp. Quarterbacks getting coached to push the ball vertically instead of dumping it off safely underneath. Given all of that, I actually expected more incompletions across the board than we ended up seeing, not fewer. So the overall completion numbers from today probably deserve a little more credit than they'd get on a normal conservative install day. Which brings me to the actual tracker. Shedeur finished right around 60% completion, with the one interception mixed in. Watson went 13 for 23, just over 56%, also with a pick. And remember, he's working almost exclusively with the ones, which means his sample is naturally facing tougher looks from the starting defense every single rep. Gabriel posted the highest completion rate of the entire group, despite his own turnover. Taylor Green didn't get much run in the numbers today, so there's not a lot to grade there yet, but I'll keep tracking his reps as the week goes on. Todd Monken addressed all of it after practice, and he wasn't giving much away, which is exactly what you'd expect this deep into camp with a competition this sensitive still technically open. He made it clear that install is essentially finished at this point, and that today and tomorrow, before the players get Sunday off, are really the start of the actual evaluation window. The stretch where the staff genuinely starts drilling into who these three guys are under real competitive pressure instead of just teaching them the offense. That's a meaningful marker. If you're trying to read the tea leaves here, it means whatever happens over the next couple of days probably carries more weight in that quarterback room than everything we've seen through the first 8 days of camp combined. I don't want this entire day to get swallowed up by quarterback discourse either, and I'll admit that might partly be on me for spending so much time on this position battle lately. Denzel Ward came up with a genuinely sharp pass breakup today, and when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this defense is loaded with talent up and down the roster. Grant Delpit is playing like a top 10 safety in this league right now. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren looks like a rookie who's already ahead of schedule, mentally and physically. Ronnie Hickman and the rest of that secondary, along with guys like Jared Verse up front, are making legitimate NFL caliber plays against legitimate NFL caliber competition every single period, not against camp bodies. Whichever quarterback ultimately wins this job doesn't need to be a world beater on day one of the regular season, because he's stepping into a defense that can genuinely carry this team through a rough patch while he grows into the role. And frankly, when you're grading these interceptions and these incompletions out of this quarterback competition, that context has to be part of the equation. These guys aren't throwing into soft, forgiving coverage. They're throwing at a corner, playing like a top 5 corner in this league, and a safety playing like a top 10 safety, and that reality should factor into how we weigh every single incompletion and every single pick that comes out of this camp. So where does that leave the overall read on day 9? If pre-snap discipline and situational command were supposed to be Watson's built-in advantage in this competition, the edge that comes purely from experience and reps and years spent in professional locker rooms, That edge simply didn't show up today. It showed up for Shedeur instead, and it showed up specifically on the one day the pads came off, which in theory should have tilted things even further toward the more seasoned arm in that quarterback room. Watson still produced a couple of the best individual throws of this entire camp, and I'm not taking a single ounce of credit away from him for that. But his lows were noticeably lower than anything Shedeur produced today, and the procedural details, the stuff that's supposed to clearly separate a disciplined veteran from a rookie still learning the professional game, actually cut the other way on this particular afternoon. Tomorrow the pads go back on, Shedeur takes the reps with the ones again, and that should tell us something a no-contact practice never could. Shedeur won Week 1 by pretty much any reasonable read of the tape. Through 2 days of Week 2, he's carrying the edge again by my count. But Day 9 of 9 isn't a whole training camp, and I'm not sitting here pretending this thing is settled off one favorable stretch. We'll know a lot more once the pads are strapped back on and the hits actually start to count.